It's been a while having you. Well, it's been a while since we've hosted you. I think the last time we hosted you was at Interpolo. So no mai hara mai. So I'm not going to sit here and keep doing all the talking. I'm going to hand over to Tikuri to open our hui. Then we'll do a quick whakawhanangatanga around the table. And then we'll get underway. Our goal is 11:30. It's our objective is 11:30 for Mutu. And then we'll have a quick bite to eat and go forward to Pilates and me. Yeah. Bye.
E hono le koroni ki tatua he maungau no ki te mato te whenua he whakaropai ki nini a tātou katoa e hui hui nei i nini te kaupapa ingo i tātou te miata. Pēnei ke nui atu i kia koutou, ko koutou te kaunihira alohe o Waikato. Nau mai, hara mai. Mō hea anau ki te o koutou ko Stu. Nau mai Stu. I whakapapa māuatahi ki ona whanaungatanga ki matamata me te pori. Tēnei ki nui atu ki a koe. Kia koutou nei i whakanui, tēnei tō tātou nei kaupapa. Tēnei te whakatau, tēnei te mihi kia koutou, nau mai, hara mai koutou. Nā, kia timatātou tātou nei hui i te KARAKIA, nino i tātou. I hoanga mano, tēnei mātou tukani ngā kupuna ki a koe roto, te mua o iukarai te tomata kai whakora. Tēnā manaki tia mai, tāki tia mai, ngā whakaaro, ngā kōrero, ngā kaupapa, kai te pute i tēnei ata. Nā reira, ka whuati mātou i tēnei wā ki a koe, kia hāpai tūngo tapu anino i a mātou. Amen.
Let's start down to the right.
Hello, Dave Dorat, Tapu Inga, kia ora tātou. I'm the Democracy Team Lead at Waikato Regional Council. Pleased to be here today, and if any of you need any help with anything, please let me know.
Tēnā koe a tikani au I whakapai tō tātou hui. Oi, nui te koa te tae mai mātou te kainihira ki tō koutou hori hau. Kia ora whakaro ko tētahi tau ko hono mai tātou hui tātou ai. Yes, ko tae mai. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi atu o te kainihira arohi o Waikato, kia koutou o Raukawa, kia whina tiamana takiroa, Hibbs, tēnā koe, Pamela, Charlie, Anaru, koutou katoa, ngā kanohi o Raukawa, kia pai te whakatiki, kia koutou Zoe, tēnā koe pai te tūtaki I a koe, ko tae mai mātui kia tēnei. Kia ora tātou katoa.
Kia ora.
Keep going.
Nā tātou, ko Eva Mahinari Kelly tōku ingoa. Nō rau kaukoro pāti te reo hau. For everyone, I'm Evan Kelly. I'm the National Policy Advisor of the National Policy Team. And
tēnā koe te whare, tau tuku ngā mihi ki tō tātou kai whakarite, me ngā mihi kia kutu katoa Raukawa, kaukaro pāteke, te mihi atu, Roger Lewis, tauranga whenua, and also very pleased to be here.
Tēnā koe te pūru mai nei tēnei rā, and tēnei te mihi atu ki a me, te whahaere o te tātou hui nei. Ko Neville Williams tōku ingoa, he uri hau no Hauraki, Ngāti Pukenga, Ngāti Mari. I'm a Director for Custom Community and Services Directorate at the Waikato Regional Council. Kia ora. Tēnā tātou te whare, tuapai a pēnea te kia koe te mātua te pene. Ko taparita tā tātou nei, I rau I te tāwhara o te rungarau, I ngā te kia koe o te rā. Aku mārei kura, ngā tira,
Ka maanga, kai maanga o te tepu nei, mihi atu nei, kia pai te tūtaki a koutou, ko wai au, he iti o tūkore he tēnei, e tūnei, e whakamihi atu nei kia koutou, ko Cliff Kelly tōku ingoa, I am part of the Regional Policy and Planning team, Andrea, with the guidance of Andrea, and a pleasure to be here to take notes of the kaupapa. My apologies, I might have to stop out from time to time, but if I don't see you at the end, I'll definitely mention the site visit this afternoon to Waikato. So kia ora tātou.
Can we congratulate everybody on Tracy May, Director of Science Policy and Information at Waikato Regional Council. And a couple of weeks ago, I found my 7th form ball photo and Carly was in it. We looked quite different. Kia ora.
Next time you'll have to bring the photo. Yeah, we'd love to see it. Mōrena tātou, ko mali a kini tōku ingoa, ki uri pēnei no Ngāti Tūpare toa. Hoki, I'm Hono at Waikato Regional Council, here along with a bunch of others from Tauranga Whenua. Always a pleasure to connect with Raukawa, looking forward to
Mōrena tātou, Ashley then, Waikato Regional Council, here in Tūpoi, and I'm really happy to be here today. Shout out.
Mari ki tātou. Tipini tēnei, he noho au I ringi te poari mato o Raukawa. Ako mihi ki a koutou I whaki mai a koutou nei. No whea o ko wai koutou. Nare tēnei ki mihi a koutou.
Yeah, I don't know. Charlie, I was the end of my breakfast, but everyone calls me Charlie because that's a long time. So I'm here with the Raukawa as one of the trustees. Lord my that's somebody called actually believes with that photo. I'm like one of only two in existence for me and everything.
A tātou I te whare, kei tō wana ngā mihi kua mihi hia kia koe a te rangatira, I tipine hei tūpere te o te nei hui, o tira kia koutou, te kaui hira o Waikato, nei rā ka mihi kia koutou, ai tautu wana ngā mihi nau mai, here mai, whakatau mai, ki roto I o tātou nei whare, ai nogo haumaru kia koutou. Wai au, ko ana ri pepe tōku ingoa, hi rua hau no Waikawa, mo Ngāti Huri ki Pipitu marae, Ngāti Kirihika, Ngāti Wihi ki Kaupo marae, te kai arehi o Putake Taira, so GU for Putake Taira.
Good morning, Robert Cookson. I'm a constituent councillor for Waihau. I also chair of ICM committee and catchment management. And thank you to Raukawa to inviting us here today. Waihau is an important part of my family for 100 years now. I was born on the edge of the Waihau River in Te Araha, so it's a vital part of our family and our business has been the Waihau, and the Waihau Rivers have been involved in it our whole lives, so thank you.
Good.
Kia ora tātou I te whare, ko Zoe Thomas Taku Inwell, he uri ahau no Raukawa no Ngāti Tūkorihi, no Ngāti Mōtai Huki. Kia ora, I'm Zoe. I work in Andrea's regional strategy team as a policy advisor, but part of my role is helping to organise the Jane Days alongside Ashley. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou, ko Andrea Julian taku ingoa. I'm the regional strategy manager in the Putake team, Raukawa.
Kia ora, ko Pamela Story taku ingoa, ko ho te tia o te konehera arohi o Waikato. Thank you so much for opening our hui today, and thank you so much, Francois, for hosting us. Looking forward to the discussion as we move through.
Thank you, Mōrena koutou. Ko Debbie Davis tuku ingoa, ngā uri ahau, no Raukawa, Ngāti Tuwharito, Ngāti Maniapoto, and Ngāti Rangi. I have the privilege of co-chairing this group today. Thank you very much. Oh, even at the time, and it's a privilege for Raukawa to host Waikato Regional Council. One, because our chair is Pāria, and she has high expectations. I had 500 this man. Yes. I've had the privilege of being amongst Katarana for the last, her and I worked together alongside each other for almost 15 years. I have the privilege of just been appointed as the Deputy Chief for Raukawa Charitable Trust. So with her and I, number one, number two team, and it's a privilege. It's a privilege because we have the most amazing staff, and I'm really proud of our staff. They make us look good. They really do. They do the mahi behind. You wouldn't appreciate what that happens behind the scenes and how it comes to the table. So what we get to do is we get to have a voice for our people. The Waihau River, I agree with you. There's so many different pieces, people believe in us of what we should be doing, how we can upfeed them, how we can help them. And it's our voice that makes that difference. And I truly believe that. But it's also that partnership, the relationships that we form along the way that actually make that journey a lot easier. You can't do it on your own. It takes too long. I mean, let's just be real. So it is a privilege to host you today. We're kind of looking forward to it. I call this an informal day for us because it's about the kōrero and it's about how do we move forward together and how do we do things that we've probably not done before. I'd like to test the boundaries as well on both sides of the fence. I just think it's healthy. So welcome. The other thing that I wanted to share with you all is Stu. He came up to me and said, I heard you putting your name up for Waikato Regional Council for the elections. I am. I'm going to give it a go. So, and I have to say this, I've watched your team for many years. Many years. I've watched people go into different kaupapa and they basically go hammer and tongs for what they believe in. And I see people compromise along the way. I think I can do that. I think I can help complement that and work alongside the team. So I'm putting my head up. So nau mai hara mai ki te puari o Raukawa. And to our whānau, welcome to our whānau. Honestly, it is a privilege. So let's get on.
Thank you so much for that. All right, so we'll go to the first item, which is apologies. We do have apologies from Councillor Clarkson for the previous engagement. Any other apologies? Do I have a mover to accept the apologies? Councillor Neva and Tiffany. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'll just get confirmation of the agenda. Do I have a mover? Councillor Neva, Councillor Cookson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And disclosures of interest. Any disclosures of interest in relation to items before the committee today? Or new disclosures that have not been previously reported in the register? Anything?
It's probably just the wild development committee. Just for you, please.
Nice. Thank you. So we'll just note that, Dave. And then the minutes. So the minutes are on page 17 of your agenda pack. These were the minutes from the this day, and it said the 13th of May 2025.
It's a good start.
Oh, I see. Okay. 10th of May.
10th of May 2024.
2024. There we go. So I've got a mover to accept these as true and correct. And Councillor Cookson, second from Charlie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Moving into item 6.1, RCT report on RMI weekends. Angela, can I get you to lead that on that?
Well, before we get, you want to do the housekeeping?
Ah, sorry, apologies.
Just walk there.
I can do that. That's it. So, welcome everybody. In the case of emergencies, there's you proceed out of this door here, and then there's doors out onto a deck on the right, and we meet out of the front of the building. If you're looking for the whare paku, then they're down the corridor, and they're on the left and or right as you go through. Thank you.
Okay, right, so I'll take the report each read. So this, and I'll just speak to it briefly, and you can just engage in some whakapiti kōrero if you like. So this decision paper really with some concerns we have with the current approach to the Resource Management Act reforms, and in particular how our treaty settlement instruments will be upheld in the new reform. We've already seen some an interesting approach taken by this current government in terms of what upholding treaty settlements looks like. And so I guess for us, it's really important that our partners can also see the benefit in the treaty settlements and advocate for our settlements during this reform process. We obviously the dilution of our treaty settlement commitments is probably one of the most pressing concerns for us. The upholding of Te Ture WHAIMANA is the primary national direction setting document for the Waikato River. There's another key concern in how that is reflected in the reform. Obviously, I do want to note Waikato Regional Council's stance during the Local Government Water Services Amendment Bill, and just acknowledge the position that was taken during that submission. So we really support that and thank you for that. We encourage Regional Council to continue that process through this reform. We believe that there is a very strong role that councils can play in upholding our settlements. Yeah, look, I guess we have concerns not only with upholding our settlement, but the manner in which the reforms will be taking place, and we believe that as an opportunity, we should look to support each other through this process. We believe that there's going, we've already heard how quickly the reforms will be taking place, and with real concerns about how we manage them. And I think again, the role of our partners in that space, and if we are able to lean on expertise in those spaces, that would be an advantage for us, and also hopefully can be an advantage for Regional Council to understand our positions through the reform as well. The protection of the JMA model is a really key concern for us. We hope Regional Council can see the value in the JMA and how it's enables partnership and speaks to the relationship that exists between local government and iwi, and we believe that that's a key part in this, in upholding the mana of Raukawa and also upholding our settlement arrangements. One of the key things I think we hear constantly speaks to upholding treaty settlements. I guess what we would say to that is there are the treaty settlements whilst there are mechanisms within the settlements that enable these types of conversations to occur, the intent of the settlement was always about a relationship between iwi and governments and council. So taking what is a transactional approach to things really waters down, I guess, the true intent of our settlements, which is about partnership. So that's, yeah, just
So can I just jump in there? So Drew, you got me. From a Waikato Regional Council perspective, given that you've read the paper, I just want to open discussion. Where do you see we're sitting currently as far as our relationship in regards to that treaty settlement? We've always known that the Waikato Regional Council supporter, but is there, given how the government's operating at the moment, is there any area there that you see as a risk for both of us really moving into?
No, kia ora, Madam Chair. I guess from my perspective, and I'm not sure I'll speak on behalf of the council, but for me, we've been at this for what must be 13, 14 years now. We've invested a huge amount into it, and I think it would, put it bluntly, would be a real loss if we were to let that go. So that's kind of what underpins my approach. And you know, it's not just investment in terms of our relationship with Raukawa and the other river iwi, it's the investment we've made in the community in terms of all the work that's gone into PC1. Now, sure, it's had a few ups and downs, but we work, as is mentioned in various other places in this report, and of course Charlie and I are on the River Authority, the River Authority as well. Both the River Authority and the Regional Council work with each other and lean on each other in respective ways as well. I fundamentally really support where you're going here. I guess the only question I've got is around number 2, in terms of just want to flesh out what you mean by joint advocacy approach, because obviously there's 4 other river iwi, there's a River Authority as well. I fundamentally think we're all on the same page. I think the concept of sharing submissions, so we all know where we're going. So that's the only one I want to flesh out, because I feel like if we'd all, as in all 5 river iwi and the River Authority, all agree on the same submission, that would potentially be pretty challenging at times, but it doesn't mean we're not all on the same page and ultimately submitting in the same direction, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And if I could just pick up from Councillor Kneebone that WRC remains committed to our JMA partnership. As Stu has said, this has been going on for a number of years, and I believe that our organization and our communities have benefited from that relationship. We remain consistent in our advocacy around the primacy of Te Ture Whaimana to this government and successive governments. We have been doing that regardless of who happens to be in the big house in Wellington. And I don't see that changing. We have our Chris McClay, our chief executive, and we have our little mini dossier on Te Ture Whaimana that we pull out of our briefcases on a regular basis whenever we're speaking to MPs, whether they're ministers or members of parliament. We take every opportunity to share information about Te Ture Whaimana, its origins, its the progress we are making as a region around that, and so I don't see that changing. As Stu has highlighted, I believe we do share between our entities the submissions when they are under development, so that where there is alignment, we can reinforce each other's submissions. But as Stu has highlighted, that is a lot of parties to get agreement on everything. And so I think it's important that where there is clear alignment, that we endorse each other. And if there are areas where there might be a different stance, it's important that we share that so we know. and there's no surprises in that. And then we move forward from there. So that would be my comment.
Nice. So through you, Rachel, do we do that well on both sides of the fence? Or is there always room for improvement?
Well, I mean, obviously our staff, respective staff at the coalface are doing that stuff, so I don't know if they've got anything to contribute on this one, but I feel like we do, and if we're not, if there's ways to improve that, then I think we need to address it. Look, there's no doubt we're up against it. Myself and the CEO of the River Authority, Antoine, and other junior, we met with Tamapōtaka. This was obviously about a month and a half ago, and he did make the comment quite candidly that the majority of his colleagues in Parliament do not understand this river settlement, and they're kind of pushing ahead without really appreciating what they
So
need
that
to be aware
endorses
of.
this relationship that
Yeah,
we have,
exactly.
and then understanding and to make sure we're still going out and doing what we do the most.
Our local MPs get it, like Louise Upston absolutely gets it. I met with her the other day, just when Antoine, and she absolutely gets it, and I think she's pretty committed to it. But it's the ones that, of course, from the other side, the other end of the water and stuff that actually aren't aware of it.
And if I could also just add, Madam Co-Chair, that I think that there is an opportunity, though, to help our broader community understand this. You know, we're talking about how we have to have these discussions with our MPs, our members of Parliament, but there are members of our wider community that don't understand the TURE WHAIMANA, that don't understand the river settlements full stop.
Yep.
And so I think that there is an education piece. If we are going to get broader understanding, broader endorsement of a collective way forward, we need to bring our communities alongside, right? And I don't have any magic ideas on how we can do that. It is a lot of people to try and educate. When people's bandwidth is already challenged just in modern day life, right? But I think that in terms of your question about what we could do better, I think that there's a conversation for WRC and all of our river area partners to have. But how do we have this conversation with our broader communities? Help them understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating in this current environment of messaging coming out from Wellington on pro-governance. The majority of the community don't realise that we've been doing it for 14 years now.
Yeah.
Taking it to be some sort of weird new thing that's going to take us to hell and which.
But in their defense, they just haven't been across it, right? I mean, my understanding has developed because I've been sitting on regional council. Prior to this role as a counselor, it just wasn't part of my daily experience, right? And that would be for the majority of our population in this region.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? Somewhat. Resources are available for the general public in regards to education, mainly around water. Because the TURE WHAIMANA stuff it's about water. And you currently there's the debates going on about the water well. And it's still the general public that don't have access to easily digestible information about what that means.
I'm not sure what resources we have available, but I'm sure they could be better.
Education, I'm sorry, education around anything is difficult.
Yeah.
I heard a report yesterday asking university students when the budget is coming out, and their reply was, what budget? So,
Yes. Yes.
I mean, in general, but I totally agree, totally on board with that. Building up educational resources, or at least trying to disseminate to a general public. It's a really good thing. One.
So we've got a resolution and decision.
Do you want me to clarify?
Yeah, so I was just looking at number 2 and wondering whether like, instead of doing advocacy, mahitahi or it might be a bit, I don't know, but it's, yeah, just want to fish that one out of it.
Yeah, look, it is probably not worded correctly, and I think it is that it's not so much that we put on joint submissions, that we share resources and we share positions, so we're fully aware of where we're sitting when we are moving into those spaces.
So I think from what I'm getting from the corridor is we currently do that now.
Yeah.
So I don't feel that that needs to
Well,
probably.
I think there can be, there's no formal arrangement for how that takes place, and that's what this paper's asking for us to.
So we want to revamp your wording.
I'm just wondering if Marlene might be able to provide some advice on how we might.
You someone said it on the edge of my chair.
I did.
It's actually for another, another thing. I was just going to suggest that this discussion about educating the community is a really good one, and that will take an action after what we're doing currently within the organisation to achieve that, and bring something back to the next governance meeting, because I think there's a really good opportunity to do that. And just to help out with the resolution, then, if that's really what you want me to do, yes, please.
I was just thinking we need to be a bit careful about bringing stuff back to the next governance meeting if we're going to be another year away.
Or we can probably send something out.
Yeah.
So we can move the resolution that the report RCT report on RMA taken as RMA reforms Raukawa Charitable Trust and Waikato Regional Council Co-Governance Committee 13th of May being received. That one's through. Okay. Thank you.
Maybe take the last two and then you can work out the big one.
That Waikato Regional Advocate for the continued statutory recognition of Te TURE WHAIMANA. It's pretty clear. The vision and strategy under the reform system. I'll move in a second. Oh my God. That the integrity of the JMA be maintained and its model promoted as an example of effective co-governance within any new planning framework. Are you happy with that? Move in. Go. Okay. Seconder.
Yep.
And then for the second, the last remaining resolution had something along the lines of that the committee support on the ongoing approach by council and Raukawa
The central government to the protection of settlement commitments in the new legislative framework.
Yeah, I think that's what this does is it acknowledges we're already doing really well and we want to continue along that.
Are you happy with that?
Yep. So what's the wording?
That the committee support the ongoing approach by Waikato Regional Council and Raukawa to central government for the protection of settlement commitments in the new legislative framework. Move it.
Well, just clarifying, we do share all of our submissions, don't we, Tracy?
Madam Co-Chairs, we do share our submissions when we have the time available. So one of my teams at the in our organisation coordinates all the organisational input. When we have time, we will circulate it to you, but some of the submission periods are really snug. It's a nice way of putting it. And so we do our best, as Anna said, at least informal, it's not formal. We can.
So by making it formal, does that mean that that space is a given that you allocate that to the team?
Yeah, and we do it now just as a matter of good practice. You have to take that exactly what I'm hearing and embed it in. We also, so we do that as draft submissions. We also let people know when committee meetings on when it's being discussed, and all our final submissions are posted on the web for everybody anyway.
We just need to be careful with any formalising it, and we don't get sucked up by things out of our control.
No, usually.
That's why I think government timelines.
I guess it's not designed, I guess it's not designed to trip.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter where they were twisting it. That's a regular thing.
Yeah.
I do know, and that's what you're saying. We have to with that thing. So. Let's see, so far the meeting. I prefer to see the government, we align. So that the committee supports the ongoing approach by Waikato Regional to an empathy approach by WRC, Raukawa to central government and then align for the protection of settlement and settlement. Yep.
Yep.
That the committee support a joint advocacy approach by WRC and Raukawa to central government and then align for the protection of settlement. That's right.
Should that create any issues on timing?
No.
Right, sweet.
That works. Okay, yeah.
I'll move in a second for the things.
And also, so I think you'll
All in favour for all motions. Carried.
All right, we now move on to item 6.2. This is on page 28 of your agenda. Update on freshwater policy review. Not sure who's speaking. This.
Kia ora, it's Naomi here.
Naomi, I think you're muted, or else we don't have speakers.
We've got the only thing we've got is my surface, so I've turned it up and I'll be as quiet as, and we'll see if you can hear.
Hopefully, kia ora, Naomi Crawford, Team Leader, Water Policy at Waikato Regional Council. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So I'm here to present obviously the paper that's on page 28 of on the update on the freshwater policy review. So I'm happy to go over just the major points of the report itself. So the Waikato and Waipa River iwi and Waikato Regional Council recently established the co-governance arrangements for the Waikato Waipa Miniapoto River catchments. We've been meeting with Te Raupu Hotu, the joint steering group for the freshwater policy review. And we've also established the co-governance committee, and that will provide the mechanism for joint decision making on the project. So regarding the policy development, so the water policy team have continued to develop policy options and are currently working towards that working draft policy document and notifying by the end of 2027. So we've got further engagement that's been planned, and our draft engagement approach has been provided to the Waiora Co-Governance Committee for their endorsement, and WRC staff have also initiated contact with Raukawa's obviously key liaisons to discuss pre-engagement sort of planning and timeframes for engagement during this year. Other thing I'd highlight there is obviously the government has recently announced the Resource Management Act will be replaced with the two pieces of legislation. So a Natural Environment Act focusing on natural resources and a Planning Act focused on development. So the government intends to introduce this legislation by the end of 2025. And new national direction for freshwater is also sort of in train. So there's some key timeframes around that into this year as well. So I'm happy to take any questions around the report or any.
Thank you, Naomi, for your report. A question around the changes. Is that a big impact for your team? Is that what does that look like moving forward?
The changes to
from the government, the changing how you you know, that's coming forward. What does that look like moving forward?
Yeah, so it is a big change for the team. So we're cognizant of obviously depending on how that planning framework comes together, about how that changes obviously how we start to draft the plan itself. So that will have an impact, but that's not going to be sort of switched on until 2027. I mean, we know the government's going to be moving quite quickly through this stuff, obviously, into 2026 and 2027 ahead of that central government vote next year. But that will have an impact on, we will have to pivot on, obviously, that change and start to build it into our process in the next few years. So it will have a big impact, Is that any more detail you'd like there?
Do we have any indicators where that would impact the most? Or is it just an internal process of how you look at things as far as going out to the public, going out to iwi, that type of thing? Am I looking at that?
Yeah, that's right. So there will be an impact to potentially, how we engage. I mean, there will be, I mean, the government we're waiting to sort of see some more messages around replacing the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, which sort of also drives a lot of this work. That's going to be the government's already said that they're going to replace that document, and they've talked about obviously rebalancing te mano to wai is another thing that they've talked about in that process. So that's going to have an impact. I mean, as regarding engagement, obviously we're upholding our joint management agreements, and we're working in partnership, obviously, with through the Waikato Co-Governance Committee. So we're working hard on obviously working with our partners in upholding obviously Te Ture WHAIMANA as the primary direction setting obviously document for this project as well, and thinking about how we're going to engage with our respective tangata whenua and communities and sectors. So we have done a lot of planning in that space, obviously around engagement and thinking about what that looks like.
Kia ora, Naomi, it's Tracy here. I'm just in the room, so I'll just add a couple of other things. This slide that I've got here that no one can see, but we can circulate, kind of gives you an indication of what Naomi was talking about, which is, as we talked about earlier, the RM reform. But what we have at the same time is national direction coming at us. So this is where the government is doing their kind of changes and their tinkering beforehand. And we know some of that is on freshwater farm plans. We've had some meeting on vegetable production. We've had a whole lot of things. So while we're all waiting with bated breath for the legislation, there's actually a lot of tinkering that's going on. As Naomi said, the rebalancing of te mano te wai, and our constant need to help educate our folks down in Wellington around Te Ture WHAIMANA and where that sits. So in terms of it, it is hugely significant, not just for the freshwater policy review, but our entire organisation. As I said, as and when and as the process that the government's running through enable engagement will engage. But an example of a regional council down in South Island, Otago, the government passed some legislation that kind of cut one of their processes off midway through. So for us, that would be a worst case scenario. The most significant issue that we're grappling with, co-chairs, is Plan Change 1. So we are anticipating the decision from the court. I'd like to say any day now, but I've said that for about 4 years, in the next couple of months. And we know the government is as curious as we are with Plan Change 1, and just what may come out of government, what may come out of the court, and how it all knits together, and how we uphold Te Ture WHAIMANA through that, but also help our landowners, all of our landowners in the Waikato Waipa catchment, to understand what the hell it all means. And that's a challenge. So that I think will be our most significant here and now challenge, as well as the national direction, as well as the RM. So it's an exciting space.
Which is, we don't really know what impact the government's direction is going to have on PC1, do we? Because that was quite a problem last time we went through this process. And
yeah, through the co-chairs, no, we don't, Councillor Nemo, but what we what we are doing is we're in pretty close contact with Ministry for the Environment colleagues and Ministry of Primary Industry colleagues. And it's really important that they understand some of the nuances of our catchment that they won't get out of any book down in Wellington.
Yeah.
And we've also tried to connect them up with EV staff who they don't know, or technical staff such as Billy Ruck, who is coordinating. So we're trying to connect as many dots as possible for them, but we won't know. And part of the challenge of where we're all at is we're shadow boxing at the moment. We won't know until we see the detail.
I mean, this whole effectiveness of engagement with the wider community, that was really undermined by the last government direction stuff on the back of we had really good engagement with PC1 process, and that kind of just threw a spanner into the works and effectively caused a engagement overload for the majority of the community, you know, and there's a real risk. I think we're probably still suffering a bit from the impacts of that.
Food production will be an interesting one to watch, because food production is what they used to get around some of the freshwater things before. And Horowhenua and by Pukakohe, which actually was part of our catchment, the river authority. So it's important that we keep an eye on that as well.
Got any thoughts on community engagement? Who are we getting?
No, it's, we've been engaging in it since we've been elected, and then we've been, yeah, it's a hard place to be in. It's mostly once government comes out with some direction, then we're going to have to get around the table and have another discussion. That's where, because who knows where that's going to lead to.
I think you're at be conform.
Stop juggling grenades at the moment.
Also, coaches is also acknowledging the standing up of the co-governance missing. A little bit of that, and even get a quorum, but just acknowledging that it has been further up and up and down.
Yes, and we just in response to that that issue that occurred in the Melville meeting, we have appointed alternates so that we don't run into that situation again. As I said at the start of or on the earlier item, we remain committed to this process. There is some additional work that council is needing to do around the proposed changes to the tours, and councillors wanting to workshop those at a greater detail. So we just need to take a bit of time, to work our way through that, and take a really long conversation. So
there's a lot of money that you have to wait for in order to achieve objectives.
Yeah.
And it must be frustrating.
Oh, well, when the direction changes.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that the frustration from my point of view, the frustration is the wasted resource.
Yeah.
That you spend time, energy, staff time, partners time trying to move forward. And we know that these types of engagements do take time to work through, and I think that that's being respectful of the importance of the decisions that we make around these tables. But when you take time and then all of a sudden the direction changes, or the rules change, or there's a signal that the direction may change, but we don't quite know what that direction change is going to be or when it's going to be here. Our communities, our ratepayers, are still sitting there going, well, hang on a second, I'm looking to you to provide some clear messaging, and I'm like, yeah, no, we're looking to central government to provide some clear messaging. So it does put us in a bit of a tight spot here. But I just want to say that we continue to trudge forward,
Yes.
you know, sometimes it's 10 steps forward and 20 steps back at times, but we remain steadfast. So. Any other questions or comments?
Happy to move the report.
All right, so we're just receiving the report on this. Councillor Stibb and Tiffany.
Yes, yes.
Second.
Yep.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Right? It is fine. Page 82.
Madam Chair, the person who is leading the board will be online until 2:30, but can we potentially skip this?
Yep. Let's do the next one. We'll come back to 6.3 and we'll do 6.4. Strategic work program development. Under the Maori. Page 49.
Ashley's asked me to lead this one out. So we've been working on developing a strategic work program. Ashley showed us the one that Waikato finally had put together. And there were some things about that we really liked. I feel that we're strengthening the relationship that we have with Waikato Regional Council. Our capacity is increasing, our ability to engage at a, like a stepped up level was definitely, we're definitely increasing in that area. And so we have been having discussions, and we've got, if you look at the following page on page 48, there's like a list there under point 5, which is a list of just the draft areas that we're looking at, the things that came up as being important for us to discuss. And one of the things that we're seeking today is just, are there any items on this that you don't like, any items that are missing, anything that needs to be honed? This is a work in progress, and the draft strategic work program will be brought back to the co-governance for approval at a future hui. Our intent is to work out things that we can just do now. Like we're already working on some things. There's things that we're already working on. There are things that maybe we're already working on that we can have, we can sharpen up and we can enhance them. We can develop those. But there are also things that are more aspirational, and we're looking at having potentially staff time, potentially resourcing for those. And we've discussed this with Marley and Ashley and the team. And what we've been suggesting is that we look at entering into your LTP process at the council, because that's where the general decisions are made by the councillors as to what are the programs that are going to be pursued over the next 3 years. So that's what we wanted to do, is to work out, are there any projects that we want to look at that are going to have resourcing significant enough to not fit in the BAU budgets, and put them in front of councillors for a clear decision. So we know that the LTP's just been determined quite recently, but we also know that the next process starts probably really next year, I imagine, so fairly soon. It's not actually that far away. By the time we've got our draft program together, we'll be ready to go and say, well, here's a project or two or whatever that we want to be seeking additional resourcing for. And that what we're wanting to do is to have co-governance endorse that approach and have it so that the Kaimahi at WRC are aware that we will be coming to them to work with them on developing what their teams are putting forward into the LTP. Because honestly, the submission time is too late. You know, the decisions that things have reached a point where it's already been honed down, it's already been considered, and it's just not as likely to be adopted if it hasn't gone through that initial process. That's what we're thinking. So a couple of things would like everybody, perhaps we could just read through that list, see if there's anything that needs to be honed or discarded or added, and then we might need to tweak those the recommendations to just sort of mention about the entering into that LTP process. We see that as practical. It's fine to have an aspirational program, but you do need to also start to look at how are those projects going to be implemented. So I'll just take you through the potential activities for inclusion in the strategic work program. These are in no particular order. We have data sharing agreement, the RCT involvement in the gold claim response, the RCT resource consent strategy, which includes monitoring of consented sites. We have our climate change strategy, and there's work being done obviously at regional council on that, and wanting WRC participation in marae-based climate risk assessments potentially. Natural Heritage Fund application, Te Hōtaka Mana ki iwi capacity funding, social procurement. We like to support Raukawa owned or affiliated businesses. We have joint site visits, internship strategy, regular meetings between the WRC policy implementation team and Raukawa, which I think will assist with what was being discussed earlier with looking at where our approaches line up. Joint implementation planning for upcoming national policy statements, learning and development for governors and staff, potentially sort of treaty workshops, or just like who is Raukawa? Where are Raukawa? Like, let's new councillors come on board. I just think there's some real value in having those sorts of introductory opportunities. Mechanism for Raukawa input into WRC strategic direction. We also have our Raukawa green economy strategy, and then support for the delivery of existing RCT developed tools, which we have a number of. So we'd be keen to have any feedback on those, any directions that you really like, so that we can have a honed draft when we come back to you.
Can you, Madam Co-Chair, can I just get a little bit more insight when you say monitoring of consented sites and also the introduction of a new condition enabling body-informed monitoring to be undertaken every 2 years? Can you help us understand what you mean by those two?
So, we have our Te Arohirohi freshwater monitoring framework. We are looking at, we are in the process of putting together like a monitoring team, people who are going to be able to undertake that monitoring. At the moment, my team, when we're looking at resource consents, where we've got really significant resource consents with some significant issues with water in particular, we are putting in kind of placeholder consent conditions where we have conditions that the consent holder needs to invite mana whenua to undertake monitoring annually. So they're not like, there's not a risk of them being non-compliant if Raukawa doesn't do that monitoring. It's more the invitation that's the thing. But until we have got that capacity built and the people available to do that monitoring, we're putting it in those terms. But we do feel that there's like, that there's a cultural and spiritual element to the monitoring, which is generally compatible with Western monitoring, but is different. And needs to be done by uri, needs to be done by mana whenua, the people who are kaitiaki for those areas.
I think I'm just sort of thinking some of the things I'm not also involved in. It would be great if things like that are put into, I suppose, the resource consents and the tricks. So when consent applications are applied for and consent conditions are considered, things like they're obviously reporting to the WRA, but actually also sharing that data with the iwi of that area as well would be a simple way of doing that as well, and ensuring that therefore your JMA partners also have access to that information in a timely manner. These things such as I think that's a simple one that could be added into that quite easily. I mean, because quite often when there's works and earth movements, part of the consent conditions is you'll have a kaitiaki or a I suppose a protocol where there are findings that I'll have a monitor.
Extensional discovery.
So during those sorts of things are put into consents. But most importantly, I think sharing the information that they have to report to the WRC as a part of their conditions also with iwi would be really useful to our team to have timely access to that kind of information straight away. As opposed to then having to come back and forth to teams and say, have you got this, can we get access? And I know that a lot of information ends up being publicly available, but it takes time for it to get to that state. So because I'm on the peer review panel for the WHAIMANA, so if I look at that, by the time the information is publicly available, there's a long time from when it was actually reported in the sessions that information could have gone directly to iwi hapu, those sorts of things. So I think that's one of the things that I haven't spoken to Andrew about that would suggest would be a simple tool that can be pulled out and considered.
Through the coaches. So that's one of the things we are looking at as part of the data sharing agreement is to the information. We're in the process of finalising our environmental dashboard will handle that information, and so we're aiming to have it up and running by July. But access to that type of information will be provided to us to monitor. So we're establishing a work program that will kick off in July as we have designated kaitiaki monitoring for a 2-year period, and we're hoping that will be a pilot project that we'll have to continue on moving forward.
I guess through you, Madam Chair, so to add to that, I think you're getting a sense of our teams, and I'm mindful that your teams, they have their priorities that they have to do right. And I'm mindful we don't want to overload that process as well and make that process. What I get from our teams is they want a sense of being able to get information quicker or get it so that they can do what they do best. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think it's a balancing act. I think we don't want to overload your teams, but I think there should be room there to move so that it is, we don't want to overload your team that they have to do this. But the sense I get from my team all the time is if we have the information, we can act on it and up and get out there. So I just think it's a balancing. I don't think there's one hard fast rule to say, yes, you have to do this. I really don't. I think that may cut each other off at the knees at some point. But I do think that conversation needs to be open. How can we make that work a little bit better? Is there something that we can do from that perspective? So that's the sense I'm getting from the team.
And I can certainly understand that from the data sharing point of view. That makes sense. I suppose my question around the monitoring of consented sites and introduction of specific conditions, I just wanted to make sure that we as WRC understand what the ask is, because I'm not a specialist enough around these matters to be able to say that's easy to include or not include. I'm not sure. So just wanted to, and would need to take advice from staff on that. Your comments about providing input into our LTP process. I think that's a fantastic suggestion, and I think it is something that you got to get in quite early, because the number of people who rock up during the consultation process and go, well, here's this cool project, and I'm like, yeah, that's a very, very cool project, but you know, a lot of water has already gone under the bridge. But what I would, I suppose, a comment I would make in this is that if the co-governance team has a really cool idea and they get it introduced through our LTP process, we also need to be cognizant that council makes that final decision. And there can be no guarantees of what that might look like, right? And so I wouldn't ever want it to be taken as a slight or an offense if it didn't actually make it through at that final hurdle, right? We can't make that level of commitment on behalf of council until council makes that final decision. So just wanted to ensure that we're all on board, that I support the intent. And I just need to manage our expectations.
I appreciate your frankness, because I think that's been realistic, to be honest.
The only thing that would be useful would be trying to time the next WHAIMANA committee to try and work in with some early LTP or annual plan consultation.
Yeah.
So we certainly try and do that with some of the other ones.
We do. Yeah. Yeah.
And then maybe.
Action.
Yeah.
Just through the chair, just taking a brief look at the list, I suppose the only other thing I would suggest adding for discussion between the two teams is basically, for this consent conditions, the toolbox. Because everybody goes to, this is what we see in consent, so this is what we put in consent. I think time's probably come for some new thinking around what can be added that we haven't added in the past into consents, triggers that can be put into consents that we haven't traditionally done. And I suppose for me, I look at the example of what's happening in our office currently. We've got a discharge consent in regards to Kinnick. But their business is substantially changing, given that they're going to be giving up. So I suppose we are consent holders hold the consent, and when their business changes substantially, what are the mechanisms that you can put into consents, which leads to this review? Because do they still need that level of discharge? And because they're no longer doing water police production. So maybe sort of triggers put into the I suppose the other example was maybe the OI with water care. We're able to get a new tools in there in regards to them having to look at the water system, which is a condition that wasn't traditionally in. So I just think, if we could have put the ideas that I've told my head and could run through the team and see if they might be able to be put into the toolbox for WRC to use and consider when they're setting consent conditions for future consents moving forward. Thank you, Travis. Thank you. So I guess my question goes to the table is to a lot of this whatever that's coming out on the table is around operations, I call it. How much of that has to come across the table? Can our teams have that whatever behind it, is my question.
I think a lot of it, the consent last, for example, it's going to be by the ban rules, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, you're right. Yeah.
I don't have a problem bringing it to the table, but for me, that stuff, I believe, should have kōrero outside this board. And it should be amongst our staff because that's what we rely on them to do. So do they have to bring certain kaupapa to the table is my kōrero? Because a lot of this that I'm seeing is very much operational. I don't have a problem having discussions over it if there's an issue with it. You know what I mean? So I think there's a few things I think that can be tweaked outside of here.
But I think that's what number 2 in the recommendation is saying, that this is the list of things that they do want the work staff to start on and looking for endorsement from this committee to go ahead and work staff on those.
Yeah, so that brings to my point. How much of this does have to come across the table is my question to our board. Do we have to cite it in order to give permission for them to go away and do that marking?
Well, they're all different, really. I mean, obviously, the green economy strategy, that's something I'd expect to come across at a government's table. Some of the other stuff, I think, well, things, not so much so. It all depends on each issue, really. And I'm pretty confident everyone here knows what's government and what's management. So, was that sorry, Jim.
I think that's why they're also endorsing a TURE approach.
Yeah.
Going through filtering what is tier 1, let's go ahead and do what's tier 2, they can sort of work together, and tier 3 is probably the transformational stuff. It's the stuff that can probably come back to the table.
The NHF one, that's just about making sure the opportunities to apply to that fund are well publicised. I'm assuming of it. Yes. And I really support that. Yeah.
Well, and as part of this draft strategic work program, it would be great to have the overlay of these items that you outlined, as well as that timing side of it, because it's crucial that this co-governance committee meets at the right time, where if there is a matter that has to come across this table in order to make progress, that we don't find ourselves on the back foot because we didn't get it into the program. And for a number of these things, they are a bit BAU, right? And so we should know when the Natural Heritage Fund applications are opening. And so that's just part of the heads up. I think in terms of your question, Madam Chair, around what aspects of this are governance, that does this governance table need to have oversight of? Perhaps as we're working through the development of this, you and I as co-chairs could just sort of have some, have to cast an eye over it and go, well, yes, if we're talking about a resource consent strategy, absolutely that needs to come through this table. And an aspect of that strategy would be, like you say, what are the tools in the toolbox, just so this team is collectively aware of the work that is happening at an international level. I think it is a bit of a work in progress, isn't it?
But I guess what I'm getting is a sense of is our teams can go away and have those kōrero and then bring the summarised version back as to exactly what, even if you want to sum. So I guess that's what we're giving you permission to do. Right. Have that kōrero with the kaupapa that you've presented and then bring back the relevance from a governance perspective. And there is, there are the key things in there.
All right. I can't remember who's running this one.
That was me.
We do have that draft recommendation that the report is received and
And the second one is that the co-governance committee approves the continued development of the draft strategic work program to be presented. Well, we've had deep discussion about that, so I think we're all in favour of that. Move on. Second. All in favour. Carry.
So shall we go back? Wait a minute. Have we got the right person online now for We're going back to item 6.3. This is on page 32 of your agenda. The prepared reporting tool. But Angus? Got it, Angus?
Kia ora koutou. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Just ko Angus McKenzie tuku ingoa. I am a taiao consultant for a lot of work with Waikato Regional Council, and I've been supporting the Tauranga Whenua team to action this Te Ture WHAIMANA reporting framework. So just wanted to give you an update on where that's up to and really seek your feedback on and comments and any questions around it. So yeah, thank you for your time today and the opportunity. Ashley, is Ashley in the room there? I can't see the whole room, I'm sorry.
Here. Hi.
Yeah, just in terms of driving the website, do you want me to share screen or?
Please do.
Yeah, okay, cool. As long as that's switched on. Okay, I'll kick into it. So you've got the paper in front of you there, and it outlines the progress against this reporting tool that we've had to improve how the Waikato Regional Council demonstrates commitment to Te Ture WHAIMANA. This is related to probably the item you were just discussing previously a little bit. It's developed up to a sort of prototype state at the moment, which is intended to be housed on the Waikato Regional Council website. And it's about trying to consolidate and communicate clearly the impact of Council's activities across regulatory and operational areas in relation to specifically Te Ture WHAIMANA and how Council is giving effect to that piece of legislation. It will hopefully in the future enable clearer tracking of how the Council's work gives effect to the vision and strategy. It was developed in response to reporting gaps that were identified quite some time ago, 2022, and also through feedback from Riveriri around not necessarily simplifying reporting, but burrowing down to the Te Ture WHAIMANA objectives and reporting on Council progress against those. The prototype is interactive, and it's a series of online modules, and I'll preview that shortly. And it maps the actions against the 13 objectives. We're hoping that it'll enhance the transparency, I'm sure it will, traceability and alignment with co-governance expectations long term as well. The other key factor with this is that it's modular and can be updated in parts. And also we're looking to align it with Council internal processes to ensure it's efficient in a corporate sense as well. I think I'll jump to the tool now. Just bear with me while I share my screen. So this is the landing page. Share this tab soon. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Right.
And I'll be able to read properly.
Pardon? Would you like me to zoom in a little bit?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Well, we can read the blue, but the black's a bit of a struggle. Do you need us to read the black?
No, not at this stage, Stu. So this is the landing page for Te Ture WHAIMANA, the reporting framework, and it's just explaining what this is about, what the Council's role is. Bear in mind this is just a prototype at the moment, so what the Council's role is in terms of giving effect to that. And then what's proposed is a series of sub-pages where you can explore that detail further. These graphics here are, again, prototypes and just examples of how that could be presented. So the sub-pages, in this case, we've got some examples of teams that have given us input into this, biosecurity and biodiversity, and what primarily objectives they are giving effect to. So if I click into this one, for instance, goes into the water allocation policies and how they give effect to Te Ture Whaimana. Again, as I noted before, just some more thinking needs to go into this space. And it highlights those objectives that it's primarily giving effect to, and gives some detail on how that's happening in a policy sense, how that's happening in a regulatory sense. And what we're working towards is getting some better data outputs. It's sort of more of a dashboard style approach. And this is just an example of that type of data that could be into it. So in this case, it's the amount of water that's been allocated in the Waikato and Waipa catchment, and the consented take that's been allocated that has had to take into account the Te Ture Whaimana and make sure that that's considered beyond that. So what that's showing over time is as water allocation comes up for reconsenting over time, that Te Ture Whaimana is being considered in all those processes and being given effect to in relation to the decisions on those takes. So that's an example of some data that we could have in this. Let's go back. Can I get back? Sorry, I'm going to have to go back in again. As you can see, I'm an IT wizard. Okay. This is the biosecurity biodiversity landing page. And again, just noting those objectives. In this case, it's a direct commentary under those objectives around how the program is giving effect to Te Ture Whaimana, and which objectives it specifically focuses on. Here's a good example of some recent innovation just in terms of Objective M, scientific monitoring techniques such as eDNA, providing robust data for invasive species management and integration of Mataranga Māori alongside scientific practices remains at an early stage. And again, that was something that was touched on in the previous item. It's in terms of the objectives, if you wanted to explore those further, the detail would be provided within these. Another piece of information we want to put in there is here's all the things the council is doing, and here's the opportunities in the future. This is how it could be improved going forward, and we want to highlight that. So the intention of this is, once it's established, is to have it updated annually through the corporate planning processes, and then forming trends over time. One of the things that I guess the challenges of it is for Te Ture Whaimana, the objectives themselves are not measurable and specific. So that has been a challenge, and we've sort of resolved that by more storytelling around what's going on and more commentary. I guess, and the other thing with that is just being able to show trends over time, but I think there's certain data that we can use as indicators around that. And obviously we're mindful of the Te Ture Whaimana review that's going on at the moment and how that might change things too. So having it modular and being able to be easily updated has been an important part of the project as well. That's all I had at the moment, but I'm really keen hearing your feedback. We've had feedback from Waikato Tainui at previous co-governance hui just a few weeks ago, and governors have given us some insight into the look and feel and how they might like to see that play out, and also mentioned having a further workshop on this, just to explore that in a bit more detail. So I'll put it back over to the co-governance committee and welcome your questions and thoughts and feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Angus. Joe Strenebine here. Hey, look, I really like where you're going with this, and I think the WRA board will be quite interested in this as well. Just thinking, PC1 would you envisage, for example, that once PC1's up and running, we might have a section that would say, hey, 98% of farmers complied with the PC1 rules in the previous year, or something like that, you know?
We've talked about that exact example, actually. Yes, indeed. Yeah. So PC1, obviously, it's still going through that court process now. But once that's landed, there's some really good metrics that we can track through there.
Yeah.
Particularly with the amount of farm plans that are being processed.
Yeah, because I mean, I sort of see PC1 as sort of one of the key regulatory tools that we're using to give effective to Te WHAIMANA. And so it seemed logical to report on how we're going with implementing it. And then, of course, the next iteration, PC2, whatever we call it, there might be, at that point, whenever that is, another section of this tool that would be sort of tracking progress with that as well. Yeah.
Three questions. So just for clarity, PC1, PC2, uneducated, are you able to give us an understanding of what I mean, it's a monitoring?
So the regional plan rules, like a regional plan rule, set out what you can and can't do basically, and so PC1 was plan change 1, which was a change to the chapter in the regional plan that managed effectively primarily diffuse contaminant loss from agricultural activities designed to improve things in order on the back of the 35 already here. Yeah.
In the Waikato one.
Yeah, no, just in the Waikato. Yeah.
And when you say for the farmers and that to give them that tick off, is that from a reporting perspective that goes back to central government?
No, it's not. It's us really, the royal us, as in River Iwi and the regional council, making sure that the regional council's playing its part to give effect to 35 mana. And of course, PC1's just the first iteration of that 80-year journey. So 10 years time, there'll be a PC2.
But I think that suggestion would be a really great way of helping create the link between Plan Change 1 and the TURE WHAIMANA. The Plan Change 1 was triggered by the vision and strategy for the awa. And that is, just going back to our earlier korero around educating our broader community about why we do things. Because there are still a number of people who believe that Plan Change 1 is just something that WRC conjured up because you felt like
that's what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a great suggestion, Sue.
Could I just, Angus, kia ora.
Kia ora.
Stephen, keeping it tēnei. Just you touched briefly on measuring outcomes and how difficult that could be, and a part of those outcomes you suggested was how we tell our stories. And what I suggest, just for the depth of this conversation, that's where the education comes for the general public. We'll remember stories, but we won't remember details. Details are for the office people. But if you can get the narration right and the stories collected and as a part of that mātauranga Māori, the reason we feel passionate about things is because the story is handed down to us. And then we work daily in these areas, whether it be river or whether it be whenua or whether it be pest control. So it's those stories that connect us, and they're our underlying motivators, really, Angus. And I just want to just talk with that. You said the importance of, well, you briefly touched on how important stories will become, and I think they are. I think they're crucial to any level, actually, but to the public in general. Kia ora.
Kia ora. One of the things we've just recently discussed as a project team, and is getting together some interviews, so series to tell some of those stories, so that something like this could actually be supplemented with some video footage of people speaking to those stories around what is going on. So because we've done interviews internally and written that down, but I think it's far more powerful if someone can talk to that and sort of articulate in their daily job how this piece of legislation and this vision and strategy is influencing their work. So that's one of the things we talked about, and they're really keen to explore that with iwi as well.
In regards to the reporting, it'd be really good if we could have a workshop as it further developed with our staff, so that they can have that understanding the tool and how it was planned, so that they can extend it to them in their decision making as well. Probably the WRA staff might approve that as well.
I think that was a much broader audience for this. And what a great opportunity to bring everybody together that's involved in this, so that it's truly a shared experience and development process.
We would welcome that as a project team. Yeah. Fantastic.
Okay, so sorry. No other discussion, Cordelia, what to say? Okay. So the reports, the TURE WHAIMANA reporting tool, Raukawa Charitable Trust and Waikato Regional Council Co-Governance Committee. That is the maybe to see.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi nui.
Thanks, Angus.
Ngā mihi.
Madam Co-Chair, we will now go forward to item 6.5. It is our last item, and we are so we'll try and make some pretty rapid work on this, because I know we've got our field trip to get to. So this is the Climate Change Alliance. Is on page 50 of your agenda, and committee members just want to note that online we have Councillor Jennifer Nicol. Councillor Nicol is the chair of our Climate Action Committee, and has really been spearheading a number of these conversations with our various partners, both iwi partners and our TA partners across the Rohe. And so just wanted to acknowledge Jennifer. I do know that she is driving to Otorohanga though, so I don't know if she's able to pitch in, but just wanted to acknowledge the. I know we don't want to be Mayor Wayne, but I did want to acknowledge Councillor Nicol, because she is really driving this positive kaupapa, and so just. So I'm not sure who is going to speak to this. Ashley?
It's all right through me, Madam Co-Chair. I'd just like to take the report as read. And I guess just really open up the floor for commentary and feedback. Also noting that Jennifer Nicol is online and she's well across this mahi, as well as Anoro, who's from joining us, who's quite well across this from an RCT perspective about the mahi that's already underway within this space. The initial thoughts or feedback?
Kia ora, everyone.
I do.
I did pull over. I have pulled over. Yeah, really happy for Anaru to speak on this if he is willing, because it's come out of our conversations. I have started this with Waikato Tainui as well, but we're happy to work at the pace at which Raukawa is keen to go. But essentially, yourselves, you have a climate strategy, we have a climate strategy, they have some overlap. We had Tutahanga Douglas already analyse an alliance for Waikato Tainui, where we align their strategy with ours, as well as with Hamilton City Waikato District so far. It's fairly high level, but that's the kind of thing where we just see where are some alignments and then where are some opportunities. And if they can flow into a future strategic work program, then kei te pai. If there's not much in the short term, then maybe something in the long term, possibly even when we learn from our JMAs with other iwi partners. But yeah, just keen to get your thoughts on this as a JMA, hui,
on formalising just the idea of it, really. So I'll leave it for you guys to discuss. Yeah.
Yeah, fine, mate. Just also just want to acknowledge Councillor Nicol. Just into last name just then. So just the mahi he brings for this program. Yeah, we've had a number of conversations around climate change and how WRC might be able to support Waikato in this space. Also want to acknowledge I think it was Ashley and TIMATANGA who did the literature review, put those two pieces of mahi together with the yours alignment and sort of identified how we aligned and how we might work together. One of the things that was a miss from the literature reviews through no fault of their own was our marae climate resilience kaupapa that we just kicked off, and that looks at how we support our marae and enable our marae become hubs of resilience during climate change. And so that's a project that we are partnering with Te Puna Kōkiri on and other Crown agencies as well. We see that there is an opportunity to bring WRC on that conversation as well. And as Jennifer pointed out, it's just finding those alignments with that kaupapa in our work stream. That sort of feeds into the emergency management legislation feedback that was sought this week. I think it's due this week, so we feed into that as well and looked at how our marae, I guess the roles our marae played during COVID and how they could play similar roles during, I guess, emergency response and marriage support. Yeah, but I guess the big thing from that conversation is making sure that our marae are equipped, supported to be able to play those roles. So yeah, that's where we're sort of heading at the moment. We've brought in a project manager to oversee our marae climate resilience kaupapa, and we'll be reaching out to WRC to sit down and look at. I guess this is one of those low-hanging fruits that we identified through that strategic workshop. So that's about it, I think, from my point of view.
Oh, look, I think it's an excellent work stream, mate. So yeah, it's absolutely the right thing to be doing. Both organisations to be working together. Yeah.
And you make a really solid point there around the connection between climate adaptation, natural hazards, emergency management. You know, I think that, and also the recognition of that often the outcomes of those situations span a much broader area than just a district council boundary or a locality, and that most effectively and efficiently respond on behalf of our communities and our citizens, the more joined up our approach, the more shared the information is, the better we can coordinate. And the more effectively we can resource, because that's the other thing that comes out of this, isn't it? Is if we can align our planning, then you know, this I think would be an ideal thing that then feeds into our LTP, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
That this then just starts to make lots of sense, and it's harder to say no to. So.
But it also holds in the beach to account of what, you know, we feed into it.
Yeah.
It's ours.
Yes.
So,
yes. Oh, Robbie.
Madam Chair, yeah, I 100% support this. I was in Wellington yesterday and I was actually sitting with our manager of civil defence. After that, I've had this go and I was actually saw Stu. Husband and, you know, the discussions, iwi and marae are vital in those times of civil defence. There's just about no other organisations that could actually help in that time of need, and to make those marae climate resilient, or what needs to be done with them, that they are there for future generations and of all communities, I think it's vital, so 100% supported. All of, that's not just Raukawa, it's actually all of everyone in the Waikato region.
Thanks, Will.
Any other comments? So just in terms of the recommendations, we've got that the report is received. We've got that the co-governance committee endorses the intent to establish a formal climate change alliance between Raukawa Charitable Trust and Council, and that the co-governance committee approved the development of a joint climate action work program under this alliance.
Happy to move.
We've got a mover in Stu and a second in Charlie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, and I believe that brings us to the end of the formal parts of our meeting. Are we officially, do we close with the KARAKIA? People close that one capacity.
Yes, so I usually at this time, because we are informal, I'd like to go around the table and see if there's anybody that wants to add any comments to our hui today. Anything really. It's just about, for us, it's always about the relationship. It's always about having those confidence of having those conversations. For me personally, I think we achieved quite a bit in a short time, you know, and I appreciate the fact that we've had some frank conversations here. But it's all been reputable. So I look forward to our next one. So I'm just going to quickly go around our board table and just get some feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kia ora. Still getting my feet wet in this environment. And I can't emphasize enough the value of stories and storytelling. When I was a child, we hunted and gathered kai from the Kaimai Ranges. And the rivers weren't just nice to look at, that's where we got our kai from. And when I was a child, people fished and gathered tuna for everything. For gatherings like this, and for tangi, and it's what you took, and they were bountiful, and it's still a cherished kai. And that's why I'm interested today. It's those stories, and we'll come with those. And if Angus and the team and Angaru and his team gather those stories, they're very persuasive on every level you care to take those stories to Parliament down to our marae. So I just want to thank everyone for this cordial today. Kia ora.
Yeah, for me, I just appreciate the fact that we can both our staff teams here with us, which shows basically the importance of this occasion. And although we managed to keep to a really good timetable, it just shows that the importance that's being placed on this. And just noting that whilst this is a governance committee meeting, we are one of the same, because we are constituents, and the majority of our whānau live within the Waikato regional area, so we are the same, working together in the same outcome.
Well, thank you for inviting us here today to start off with. I think things are going to change. We can't stop. Change is change, but it's how we respect each other in discussing change. And as long as we're open and willing to discuss it, things are able to work through and get to an outcome that not just what's best for the Waikato region, but for our own individual catchments, isn't it? So I think that's the most important thing going forward, is what we do for each other, not what fighting and squabbling. It's what we can collectively do together. So thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Third board.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, look, thank you, co-chairs. It's always, and Raukawa, appreciate your hosting of us. You always do that really well. It's always good to come back here. We should do it a bit more often, though. Once a year, but, yeah, look, for me, you know, despite some of the negativity coming out of Wellington, I often think that I wish they knew. But I think we espouse the best things about working together through these processes, and I just wish the rest of the country and the community and Wellington in particular knew how seamless these processes work, you know, because I think it is working the way it's supposed to work. And for some unfortunate reason, there's a bit of a narrative out there that doesn't really reflect what actually happens on the ground. But yeah, thank you.
I always find these co-governance meetings to be really helpful and really productive. And sometimes we do have to bring uncomfortable discussions to the table. And sometimes from a WRC point of view, I need to bring some of the messaging that we hear in our communities, because it's important that we're all aware of it. And those ways of thinking might be challenging for us to navigate, but that's what our job is. And our job is to bring those conversations to the table. And so I really value the environment that is established around our JMA partnerships and Raukawa in particular. As you say, we've got Katarina around our table, and I certainly value what she brings as one of our counselors. But really appreciate the hosting today. Appreciate that we made reasonable time through that agenda. But we didn't skip over the heart of the conversations that need to be had. So thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I agree with all the people around the table. It was lovely to see you, Robert, at our table. I always enjoy Stu. You've been around for so long. You're one of our pros, I believe. And I agree with the kōrero. What I got from today was education is the key, and educating, including myself, educating all of us. But it's I think in your world, it is interchanging all the time. I sit here and I think, do I really want to go into that world when it's changing all the time? I mean, we have the same sort of challenges, but nowhere near like what you do. You know, we set a plan. We'll invest attention for our people. And I know you have the same, except you have some dictators, and it must be frustrating to have. I agree. If only they could sit at our table and see the relationships that are being formed. They sit down in Wellington, you know, make those decisions. So I do sympathise with you guys, you know. But I'm with you, Stu. I think we should have more regular catches ups because you know we've got some common areas that we can both offer each other at many times. You know, I think our staff, because again I always do this because we can't do it without our staff. You know, they're our leads. They're the people on the ground. They're the ones that bring the information to us to make our decisions. All right. And so we rely on that reliability. So I acknowledge that. So I'm not going to keep talking, but I acknowledge the fact that we have Katarina at the helm, and I know she sits in your guys' spaces. And to be honest, she's valuable in the sense of she brings that beautiful knowledge to our table, as well as that humbleness that I believe Raukawa has always endorsed. You know, even prior to Katarina coming on board our chairs, we've always encouraged our team as being humble. I thank my fellow trustees for attending today. I couldn't do it without them. Charlie is invaluable to us with her. She sits on many different boards for us, so it brings that additional knowledge to our table. So, ngā mihi ki o koutou katoa. Tipini.
Ko te orere kia whakakapi tēnei tō tātou nei wā. I tātou nei. Roger. Tēnā koe, ko te mahara. Ia, kia koe mi tō hōra. Tēnā. Kia o koutou nei. I puta mai o koutou nei kōrero, i a koutou nei whakaaro i tēnei, ata tēnei te mai ki te hononga o ngā kōrero katoa i puta mai i rungi te tepu i tēnei ata. Nā reira, mino i tātou. I hoanga manu e te tōtori tapu, whakiungi mai mātou i ki roto i te aroha no paihiri te anō mātou ki te rangi mairi no Waikato ko te manga he tautoko mai. Ai nei, ake nei, ai. Kia ora. Oh.
Hi outside the.
Oh, me tō tātou nei kai. I hua ko mga kai ko rana i ringi te tepu nei, kia tuku ngā kupu nei hei whakamoeneti ki tō ngō tapu. Āmi nei. Āmi. Kia ora. Kia ora.